Welcome back to the home of the freestyled story. This week, I decided to do something a little different. Instead of having someone I know provide me with some words, I decided to find a random word generator online. So, here we go. Let's press the button and see what they give us. And the words are horses, teeny tiny, ablaze, and needle. Let's see where the magic takes us. Phoenix was running through the wheat field as fast as he can. He was terrified. He knew that there were people chasing him. He had no real clue why, but he knew he just had to get away. Phoenix was known for his necromancy. While his name was widely known, his face was not. So he was confused into why these people would be chasing him per se. He didn't go around to different cities saying his name because he knew how infamous it was. And he knew that necromancy was forbidden. But of course, that didn't stop him from living his life. He just usually took up a different moniker while he was wherever he was, which made him wonder what happened this time. He was still groggy, trying to piece together the moments of his night as he continued to run through this wheat field. He remembered going to the local pub last night in the new town that he was in. He had many drinks as normal, and then he started to recall meeting a vixen. She was sly and she was beautiful. She had long, dark, raven black hair that reached down to her hips, and she would keep twirling her fingers in between her hair as they spoke throughout the night. She had beautiful, bright blue eyes that you would get lost in. They were almost cold. They were so piercing, he couldn't help but be attracted to her. So he recalled chatting her up throughout the night and enjoying her company. But then after that, it got pretty groggy. He woke in a stir from the loud banging on the door. He looked around to his surroundings and couldn't quite grasp where he was exactly, but it definitely looked like he was at an inn. They must have had a nightcap, but she was nowhere to be found. Looking around, he noticed there was a body, however, on the floor. He went over to approach it. Touching it, it was ice cold. He couldn't really make out who the face was, but as he was still trying to figure it out, the door slammed open with a loud stir, and in marched 5 to 6 people, pointing their wands at him, telling him to put his hands up. He panicked. He didn't know why they were there. It must have had to do with that body that was on the floor, but he didn't even know who the body was. So he did the most logical thing he can think of. He tried to ask the people who they were and what was going on, and also who this fellow was next to him that was on the floor. They of course didn't answer. They told him that he needed to answer all the questions, and they were very abrupt and rude about it. They told him he needs to surrender himself because he is going down for the murder of Knight Vasquez. He figured that must have been Knight Vasquez on the floor, but he still couldn't understand what transpired last night. So then he tried to politely speak with them and reason with them, hoping that that would let him go, but they told him they knew that he was the necromancer and he would have to surrender himself. Once he heard them call his name, he jumped out the window. He knew the only resolution at this time would be for him to get away. He leaped out the window and he ran off through the town, causing a stir. The guards that initially came into his room followed him right out. Some were already downstairs, some went through the window, and some went back down the stairs. And now he had a crowd of them following behind him, yelling to tell him to stop and asking the people to move out their way as they bustled through the town. He continued to run until he got to the field of wheat. And he kept going, figured that this could be enough coverage to hopefully be able to lose him. And now, as he's running through these field of wheat, he's not quite sure what to do, but the only option again was to get away. He knew that there was a forest a few clicks out of town. At least if he'd be able to get there, there'll be a lot of trees that would allow coverage and for him some time to think. But the guards were catching up and catching up fast. They were shooting out spells and arrows at him. He was able to dodge most of them unscathed, but a lot of them were coming way too close for comfort. So he continued running, and luckily as he escaped out of the wheat field, now in an open area, he seen that there was a stream to the left that had wild horses drinking from it. He figured that's the best way to escape now. So he ran over to the bunch of horses, and he slapped the butts of all of them except one that he hopped on. The others scattered across from the stream while he was able to ride on the one wild horse, barely hanging on, but enough to help him get away. He could finally see the forest coming into view. So he kept going as straight as possible on this wild horse that kept bucking and neighing, and it was all over the place, but it was still getting him where he needed to go. Once he got into the forest, he let the horse off and to do its own thing. He figured being on the horse now, trying to guide between the forest, would be much more problematic than making the way by himself. Now in the forest, he tried to make his way through it as easily and as quietly as possible, not to give away his location. He knew that even though he rode a horse over to the forest, it's possible that they could be here any moment now, seeing that they weren't too far behind before, and who knows what type of magic most of those guards had. He slowly made his way through, coming to a spot where there seemed to be quite the many fallen trees. He just laid low, kind of burrowing himself in the dirt to hide behind any passerbys. And as he sat there and tried to think of a new plan, a loud voice started to bellow out through the trees. "Phoenix, the necromancer, we implore you to come out while we're still acting politely. We have gotten you for the murder of Knight Vasquez. You are in the room with the dead body. But if you come out now, we can take you in quietly and simply question you, unless you are looking to lose your life. Again, Phoenix, come out now so we can help you help yourself." He recalled that voice from last night. It was the vixen that he met at the pub. Her voice was definitely distinguishable in the weird way that she would slow down and slither her words. He remembered it oh so vividly, even though the night was very foggy. So he continued to listen as she bellowed through the trees even more. "Since you murdered Knight Vasquez, I am speaking with you as acting head knight Valerie. I am telling you that we will help you if you come out now. But you must come out peacefully." It all started to click in Phoenix's brain. The reason why she was there last night must have been to frame him for this, and now because she's head knight, it's the only thing that would make sense. Him being with her last night, the night being groggy because she must have drugged him when she killed the head knight at the time, Vasquez, and now she become the head knight. That's the only logical reason that everything was going to shame, but why would she choose him of all people? It must have been also for the infamy, her first capture being Finnick the Necromancer, the infamous Finnick the Necromancer. He understood clearly what was going on now, or as clear as it was probably going to get. So he decided, instead of hiding, let's draw them out. He can easily run away as long as he can get away first. So he devised a plan, reckless as all can possibly think of, but he was known for being quite reckless. Just looking at the path of magic, he decided clearly reckless was in his nature. He started to lay down some groundwork for his plan as he continued to listen to her speak through the trees. We know that you are going to try to use Needle to resurrect Knight Vasquez. We also are aware that your Needle, if even used to make one stitch, can resurrect any human again. You are out of options since there are no dead humans to fight for you in this forest, so it's best to just come out and tell us why you had this plan. What was your purpose? The more she talked, the more he understood where she was coming from. She used him not only because he was infamous, but because she can fake this motive onto him. But he didn't care anymore what her purposes was. His only purpose was to get out of here alive. So he continued to finish the groundwork, and then he yelled out to them, I'm coming out! I'm coming out! Please, don't attack! So he started to walk towards the entrance where he initially came into the forest at, and it sounded like some of the people were already in there, and at the very minimum, Knight Valerie had to at least be in the forest to make her voice echo through in such a fashion. And once he made his way over there, he seen about 20 to 30 people standing around in the guard uniforms that were initially chasing him, and Knight Valerie standing in front of them. You made the wise choice for coming out. And as he started to walk towards them, he stopped and told her that he actually had no real reason why he should give himself up, because he still didn't understand the situation completely, and if they wanted to talk, they could talk now. But she clearly was too busy trying to cover herself, so she immediately flung some magic at him. Luckily for him, one of his skills that he's picked up over the years was also reflection magic, so he was able to bounce the magic off of his hand, shooting it towards the side. And she shot at him again and again and again, and he continued to swat them all away using his reflection magic. And then after a while, it started to get weird, because as he looked around, there were multiple trees that have been shrunken down. And he realized what she was shooting at him wasn't with the intent to kill, but it was some type of shrinking magic. Because now, as he looked around, half of the forest that was surrounding them, that was so vast a moment ago, was now teeny tiny. And because all those teeny tiny trees were there, it started to open up the forest much more, where you can almost see outside of it, back to possibly where the wheat fields were, and hearing the stream very strong now behind them. But with that, it was also much more noticeable that there was some movement happening. It was very unsettling. The movement seemed on a very grand scale, but also very slow. She asked him what the movement was. He just shrugged nonchalantly with a little smirk on his face. She told him he must be up to something, but he just smiled and continued to reflect some of the magic that she was still shooting at him. After a while, it almost felt as if the wind was whistling around them in a circular pattern, because the movement started to creep around them slowly. And it was very unnatural, and everyone was in such a panic. But Phoenix was not. Phoenix smiled, and then he snapped his fingers. And as he snapped his fingers, these trees started to slap down at the different guards, swatting them away. It caused a panic. They started to run, bumping into each other and into more stable trees. Even Knight Valerie was shocked. She was stunned. She yelled out to figure out what was going on and tried to command all the guards to stay in formation and not be so frantic. But they couldn't figure out what was going on. How were these trees moving? They were inanimate a moment ago, but yet now They're circling them and fighting against them. Even some of the teeny tiny trees were making movements, hardly able to be noticeable because they were so teeny tiny, but they were moving nonetheless. As one of the trees were walking by, he decided to climb on top of it, getting pretty high up before he started to speak. Well, you said you knew how my needle worked. What you did not know is that it does not only work on humans. It works on any being that is now dead that was once living. So all those trees that were cut down, I was able to get to them, and I was able to sew them up with my needle, and here they are, my little babies, coming to do my bidding. And those little babies, as he called them, continued to swat and knock out all the guards until it was just him and acting head Night Valerie. He laughed at her some more. You tried to set me up. You tried to make this all go your way so you can be the acting head knight. Well, how is this for your first job? You get to be humiliated by Finnick the necromancer. And she was panicked. She didn't know what to do at this time. He did say that these trees were once dead, so that means they could be lit on fire. And that's exactly what she did. She started to use her fire magic, shooting them out at tree after tree after tree, setting them all ablaze. So now there are trees flamed up with fire amongst some trees that were still very much living, so they didn't catch. So now the reanimated dead trees were all set ablaze, but this caused a ring of fire to now be set ablaze, trapping Phoenix and Night Valerie inside. They had a stare down. He looked down on her as he was sitting atop the tree, and she looked up at him as she demanded that he come down and he stop this farce, and for her to be able to confiscate his needle as well before she has to take more drastic actions. He disagreed, of course, and he just watched as his trees started to burn. She then threw a fireball at the tree that he was standing in, and unfazed, he hopped out of it and landed on the ground gracefully, surprising to her. He laughed. He said, "I can do this all day." And she snarled at him. She was upset. She couldn't understand why she was losing to someone like him. Just last night when they were in the pub, she felt like he was nothing but a drunkard who got his infamy through stories and legend and not off of real feats. But clearly, he was much more clever than she thought. She figured this will have to turn into a war of attrition. He'll have to get tired, and he'll soon run out of beings to reanimate since there aren't any more dead trees lying around. So, the only option is to go at him with all that she has and hope that he tires out first. But then, just as that was happening, he heard horses neigh in agony. So he ran towards them and noticed that there was a horse that just recently died in the fire that was set ablaze by the night herself. So he used his needle and struck through the horse's leg a few times. So the horse hopped back up, a now reanimated dead being, completely free of flames. Phoenix hopped onto the horse's back and yelled "Ta-ta!" as he used the horse to get away, leaping over the fallen trees and bodies and anything else that might have been in his way. And he got out of there, leaving Night Valerie to clean up the pieces. And that's it for this week's story. I think the lesson this time was never go against a necromancer because they can be pretty innovative, or become the innovative necromancer, you know, if you don't mind like being called out on rules and whatnot. And don't forget to come back next week when we have have a brand new set of words that gives us a brand new story that will be right on the spot. Ta-ta for now.